Hello gardener, welcome to this month's garden guide. Every month I provide you with a bunch of ideas on what you can plant right now to stay on track with your gardening goals. August is a very busy month as I sow seeds and prepare for my most productive growing seasons, fall and winter. In this video I'll share plenty of planting ideas for August and explain my game plan for sowing seeds to make the most of the upcoming fall season. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Jara. I've been gardening all of my life and I'm a professional seed and plant nursery. I love to share my knowledge and teach others how to garden and grow food. So you've come to the right place if you want to improve your gardening skills. This video is full of a lot of ideas, so I created a free printable PDF checklist with all the crops I'm about to mention so you don't miss a single one. To get it, please follow the link in the description and I'll email it to you. Let's get into the crops you can plant or start from seed right now in August. First up is onions and leeks. If you're in a mild winter climate, barely any frost and definitely no snow, then you grow onions and leeks during the fall, winter, and spring like me. They just take forever to germinate and get to transplant size. I like to give them 3 to 4 months time. My target date to transplant them into the garden is October and November, so I start sowing seeds in July with August being my last chance. I like to fill a 10 by 20 tray that has drainage holes with some seed starting mix. Then heavily sprinkle onion or leek seeds. Once they germinate and grow over 6 inches tall, I gently pull them apart and voila, I have a ton of onions ready to transplant. I have a fantastic tutorial that guides you through every step from sowing seeds to planting onions, which I will link below in the description. And honestly, at this point in my YouTube journey, I probably have a tutorial for just about everything I'm about to mention, along with seeds and or plants available on my website. I'll include all these links in the description for your convenience. Moving along, the next crop category is corn. August is the last month that I will direct sow seeds for all sorts of corn to make sure I harvest before it gets too cold. I highly recommend you choose some of the early maturing types of corn to make sure for sure that you will harvest before cold fronts start moving through your area. While picking out seeds, select varieties that mature in under 70 days. Even if you don't get snow and have mild winters, I do notice that corn plants kind of slow down in growth when exposed to the cooler temperatures of fall. Corn is part of the grass family and basically just needs a lot of water and nitrogen. Provide those two things so they grow quickly and you should be able to harvest before it's too late. You might be wondering if you can start an herb garden right now. Well, take a look outside. If your daytime temperatures are over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, small young herb plants or seedlings will not be happy. So I do not recommend you transplant new herb plants or direct sow seeds outside right now. But you can start sowing seeds indoors since the temperature is more favorable for all types of herbs like these right here. That way they start growing and are ready to transplant at the end of September. My goal is to sow tons of herbs from seeds indoors in August, transplant at the end of September, have them grow throughout my entire fall, winter, and spring, and then by the time summer arrives, the plants are very big with larger root systems that can withstand the intense heat. A lot of herbs are actually perennial plants as long as they don't get killed by the cold or intense heat. Here is a perfect example. This is traditional Italian oregano that I started from seed last year in August. It is now a 1-year-old plant and has a large and mature root system that helps it thrive even when temperatures are hitting around 100 degrees Fahrenheit and in full sun, no shade cloth. If this was a small, newly planted plant, it would be struggling right now. I say this because a lot of hot climate gardeners tell me their traditional European types of herbs like oregano, basil, rosemary, and thyme just die during this time of the year because of the harsh environment. So just explaining how I get mine to survive. If you're in garden zones 8 and up, you can continue transplanting the more heat tolerant tropical types of herbs like these right here. This is just one Cuban oregano plant which thrives during the summer. A lot of people ask me what to make with Cuban oregano, so I made a YouTube video showing my recipe for sofrito, which is a vegetable-based mirepoix type of thing. I add it into just about everything to add extra flavor and use it as a marinade. It is a fantastic way to use Cuban oregano along with a ton of other herbs and veggies from the garden. I will link that video in the description so you can get some ideas on how to use Cuban oregano. If you're in zones 9 and up, keep planting gingers like regular culinary ginger, shampoo ginger, also called awapui, turmeric, and galangal. I have a tendency to grow them in containers or grow bags because they easily spread via underground rhizomes. Plus, it makes harvesting so much easier. I can just flip the bag over. I have plants for all of them on my website if you need some. If you're in garden zone 7 and below, quite honestly, it is best you just wait until spring to plant any kinds of herbs. That way they have the longest growing period, spring, summer, and fall, unless you bring them indoors for the winter. Next, we have sweet potatoes. If you have at minimum 3 months before your first winter frost date, or maybe your winters are so mild you don't even get a frost, like some of you zone 11 people, you can continue to plant sweet potato slips. Fertilize well to get them to grow as big as possible. Some of you in warm climates can basically grow sweet potatoes year round. They thrive even during the winter in my zone 10A garden. Those of you in colder climates need to wait until spring to plant more sweet potatoes. If you're in a subtropical subtropical or tropical climate with mild winters, no snow. This would be some zone 9 people and then all of zone 10, 11, 12, and 13. You can continue to plant tropical root crops like these right here. These types of root crops produce a high volume of carbohydrate-rich food per plant and are a staple for those of you that are trying to be more self-sufficient or are trying to grow all of your household's needs of food. They will be ready for harvest next year. So plant now, that way you can have a big spring harvest. Now let's talk about beans, and there are all sorts of bean type things that fit into this category. If you want to grow traditional green beans, wait until the end of August to direct sow seeds for bush or pole style green beans. If you want to grow some of the more heat tolerant bean type of crops like southern peas, yard long beans, winged beans, and cowpeas, I would say August is your last chance to direct sow some seeds so you harvest before the cooler days of fall arrive. These plants sense the cooler temperatures and slow down in growth and production. The traditional green beans grow much better in cooler weather, so that is why they are my main bean choice when going into the fall months. You might be wondering if you have time to plant more okra. This really depends. If you have a solid 4 to 5 months before your first average frost date, or maybe no frost at all, then go ahead and direct sow seeds or transplant some okra right now. This will most likely be zones 10 and above. Okra produces around 3 months after sowing the seed and will continue to produce over the course of many weeks. So I like to have 1 or 2 months of harvest time with them. That's why I say you need 4 or 5 months. Next, we have squash. August is a fantastic time for you to direct sow seeds for squash if you're gardening in an area with high disease and pest pressure. That way you grow them during the fall when pest and disease pressure naturally start to decline. If you have around 5 months before your first winter frost date, you can choose any kind of squash variety since you have plenty of time before the cold weather arrives. If you're in a colder climate and your first frost date is in November or early December, then I recommend you choose early maturing or smaller fruiting varieties like these right here. And that's just to make sure you harvest before it gets too cold. Patty pan squash, for example, can be ready for harvest in less than 2 months if grown in ideal conditions. Next, we have cucumbers. Here is a list of some of my top recommendations when it comes to cucumber cultivars. When it comes to cucumbers, I grow the Asian varieties or super tough disease-resistant hybrids during the summer. But now that we are nearing the end of summer and very soon temperatures will be cooling down, I can start to direct sow seeds for market and pickling cucumbers as well. They don't grow very well in high heat, so I save those types of cucumbers for planting in fall and spring. So really, in August, you can direct sow seeds for any type of cucumber. Standard cucumbers have separate male and female flowers that need to cross-pollinate to produce fruit. The male flower provides pollen, while the female flower, which is easily identified because it is the one with a tiny baby cucumber attached to the bottom of it, produces the fruit if and only if it gets pollinated. When shopping for cucumber seeds, you might notice some terminology that describes how it produces, which is kind of nifty to know. If a cucumber variety is described as gynoecious, that means it only produces female flowers. If a cucumber variety is described as parthenocarpic, that means all of its female flowers are self-pollinating, meaning you don't have to wait on the chance of a bee or something to come through, get pollen from a male flower, and deposit it on a female flower to get formation of a cucumber. Cucumbers with these traits are very productive. It's like instantly increasing your yields. Most of the cucumber varieties that have both of these traits are hybrids, but there are a few heirlooms that are parthenocarpic like Bait Alpha and China Jade that still produce a ton. I also included some cucumber alternatives because these cultivars can be used just like cucumbers, but are more disease, heat, and pest resistant plants. So if you really struggle with growing cucumbers, try one of these alternatives instead. Moving along, let's talk about greens, like crops that provide lots of leafy greens that can be used in salads, stir fries, soups, etc. If you're in garden zones 8 and up, you can continue to plant heat-tolerant leafy greens like these right here. I recommend you harvest the younger, tender leaves for the best flavor and texture. A lot of these are also perennial plants as long as it doesn't get too cold and have more nutrients when compared to plain lettuce. For example, moringa has some of the highest amounts of plant protein, iron, lots of antioxidants, and minerals and vitamins. It is still too hot for zones 8 and up to go direct sow seeds for cool season greens like lettuce and spinach. I like to sow seeds for those indoors starting in September or wait until things cool down in October to just direct sow the seeds. If you're in a colder zone, like zone 7 and below, you can start to direct sow seeds for the cool season greens like lettuce, spinach, kale, and Swiss chard. You should be able to get a harvest in before your first winter frost date. Up next, we have flowers. I like to mix flowers into my edible crop plantings because because they support pollinators and attract beneficial insects. These flowers right here are my top choices to be planting and growing right now because they're very heat and drought tolerant, so continue to direct sow seeds or transplant them during the month of August. You can succession sow these flowers, like direct sow more seeds every 4 weeks to keep the blooms going. I would stop succession sowing once you're about 2.5 months away from your first winter frost date, and that's just to make sure they have enough time to grow from seed and bloom. The next planting idea I have for you is ground cherries. If you're in a warm winter climate, as in no snow, and your ground does not freeze, it's time to sow seeds for ground cherries. They grow so much better during the cooler months of the year in warm climates. A lot of people have difficulty growing them from seed because they don't realize they actually require light to germinate. So don't cover the seeds with soil. Instead, press the seeds down so they make contact with the soil surface and then water them in. Then place it under a bright light source. They should germinate very quickly. Ground cherries are part of the nightshade family, just like tomatoes. They kind of look like a small orange cherry tomato, but they are surrounded by a papery husk like tomatillos. To me, they taste like a mix of bananas, tangerine, and strawberries. Oftentimes, I find little containers of them in the berry section of the grocery store. So I encourage you to taste them first before deciding if it's something you want to grow. I saved the best crop idea for last, and that's things in the Brassicas family. I'm talking about broccoli, cauliflower, and all of these delicious things right here. Warm winter climates like mine have a very short window to grow these crops because they don't like the heat. So it is critical that you get the timing right with Brassicas. And I have a few tips that will help you get this right. Number one, when should you be transplanting Brassicas into your garden? Brassicas do not like the heat, and if it's too hot, they will just bolt, which means start flowering instead of producing a nice big head of broccoli or cabbage. Locate the very first month of your fall season where the average max high temperature is at 85 degrees Fahrenheit or below. If you don't know when that is for your area, go to this website right here, enter in your zip code, and at the bottom will be a chart that gives the average max high and low temperatures per month. Using my garden as an example, this occurs for me in the month of October. So that is my target date to plant brassica seedlings into my garden. Number two, when do you need to sow the seeds? Brassicas take about 8 to 12 weeks to get a transplant size when grown from seed. So backtrack 12 weeks from your target date to plant them into the garden. That is when you want to start sowing the seeds. Again, using my garden as an example, I want to plant them in October. So backtrack 12 weeks, and that lands me somewhere between July and August. Number three, where should you sow brassica seeds? Things in the Brassicas family easily get stunted in growth if exposed to high temperatures. So take a look outside. If it's over 85 degrees Fahrenheit, do not sow seeds for brassicas outside. They will germinate and then stay super tiny. They won't grow, and they might not ever recover from that. Instead, sow the seeds indoors. That's the only way. Sow seeds in a 4-inch pot to give their root systems some room. Start fertilizing once their first set of true leaves grow in, and give them some kind of supplemental light, whether it be a 5,000 Kelvin shop light or official grow lights. Follow these tips and you will grow healthy brassica transplants and plant them at the correct time. If you enjoyed all of my planting suggestions for the month of August, you can find all of this information in text form to copy, save, print, or share on the monthly gardening guide section of my website, or join my email group that is linked below, and I will send you the list automatically at the beginning of each month, along with the free printable PDF checklist that comes with it, which I mentioned earlier in this video. Well, that's my comprehensive list for the month of August. If I missed anything, please comment below, or just let me know what you're most excited about growing this fall. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up. You have no idea how much that helps out my channel. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That way you get notified of when I post new videos. By following these tips, I hope your garden will thrive and you have an abundant harvest. I recommend you watch this video next, all about growing broccoli from seed to harvest. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.